the opportunity for hundreds of millions of dollars, world fame, and to be loved by billions, and then it's taken away from you. And you have to sit and watch as someone else takes your place and does everything that you couldn't. All too familiar is the story of Pete Best. Imagine being a part of the most popular band in the world and never having the chance to succeed. Kind of. A lot of people know the story of the Beatles, but not a lot know the story of their fifth member. Well, fourth member. Before Ringo Starr became the Beatles' drummer, the role belonged to Pete Best. Pete Best played in the band in 1960, right before it became the biggest band in the world. So, what happened? Well, after joining, he recorded a few songs, and then, on August 16th, their manager Brian Epstein told Pete that he was no longer a member of the Beatles. And 2 days after that, Ringo Starr joined the band. So, why was he kicked out? Well, the main consensus is that he just wasn't good enough. Not a good enough drummer. I think Pete Best was replaced for some sort of tension. John, Paul, and George said later that they didn't feel that Pete fit in. They believed that Ringo had better chemistry and decided to go with him instead. So whether it was entirely a skill issue with drumming, or there was some sort of discourse between their relationships, Pete Best was out of the band. Now what does he do? He just had the opportunity for success, and maybe he needs to find another band, right? Well, turn on the radio, the Beatles are the biggest band you've ever seen, and you were this close to being set for the rest of your life. Now we start Pete Best's solo career. And Carmela Soprano, why don't you take it from here?
Happy Birthday by the Beatles.
You know, I heard it the other day in the car. They have such a good drum solo in the middle there.
Drum solo? It's the basic 4/4.
You know, Ringo was not their original drummer. That was Pete Best. And they fired him. He put out his own album, Best of the Beatles. Sad.
So, is this what they call common ground?
Thank you, Carmela. Pete Best started putting out albums, and like Carmela said, it was sad. They didn't do well. People didn't like the music. I don't even think they were bad. I just think the Beatles were so huge, and no one really wanted to hear what Pete had to say. And this was devastating. Pete Best admitted that he tried to take his own life at one point, looking around at all the fame and what could have been, and realizing that he was the closest anyone would ever get to being one of the Beatles. Is this the end of the story? Is this just a sad tale of how Pete Best lost out at the chance to be one of the greats? Yes and no. There's no denying that Pete Best would never reach the fame or even recognition that the Beatles received. In fact, most people that like the Beatles probably never heard of Pete Best. But there is some good news. Pete eventually returned to performing. He formed the Pete Best Band, and he released several albums and built a loyal following of his own. In 1995, he also received significant royalties from an anthology album that the Beatles put out there, which included some recordings from his early time with the Beatles. So he was making a little money on the side. And overall, Pete Best is remembered as an important part of the Beatles' early history. Someone who faced the lowest of lows that anyone could ever face, and continued doing what he loved, which is playing music, playing the drums. I think if there's anything to learn from Pete, it's persevere. Don't give up. It's possible to find some sort of happiness and build your own legacy, even if it's not the one that you thought you were going to get, even if it's not the one that you were promised. Well, one of the original Beatles had a tough time, but they figured out a way to cement their name in history. Now, Pete Best's Spotify sits at about just under 1,000 monthly listeners, and you can still find some of his music today, although it's very difficult to procure some of his music. I think I have the full list of his albums. This includes some of his collaborative albums and anthology albums. Best of the Beatles, The Beatle That Time Forgot, Rebirth, Back to the Beat, the Pete Best combo, which is Beyond the Beatles 64 through 66. And then he put out a live album, Liverpool, in 1988, live at the Adelphi. And then he put out Best, which was a compilation album. And then
Cashbar Coffee Club,
40th Anniversary Limited Edition. That, I think, is his best album. The Savage Young Beatles, and Heyman's Green, which was with the Pete Best Band. Me personally, I think Cry for a Shadow and Take Me Out Sometime, off of the Savage Young Beatles album, are good songs, and they're definitely his most popular songs. If you want my personal favorite Pete Best song, I think his cover of the 1959 song Sleepwalk by Santo and Johnny is honestly really good. It adds some interesting things to the music, and it kind of stands out to other covers of the song. It's it's a very famous song. I think the Ventura's version is very good as well, but I think Pete Best's cover of Sleepwalk is pretty good. You should check it out, give it a listen. It's sitting at 3,924 listens, so get it up to 4K, right? And that's all she wrote for Pete Best. Thank you so much for watching. Try to have fun on the internet. That is my message. Goodbye and good luck.